Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. So after hundreds of conversations on this podcast, 7+ years talking with people from all around the world and fielding questions from our listeners across dozens and dozens of countries, and the growth that I've experienced myself and all of the learning opportunities that I've had the chance to be a part of, I've come to the realization that we've largely been thinking about endurance wrong. We think about endurance, the ability to endure. I'm not talking about endurance purely through the lens of the physical capacity, but we think about the ability to endure through the lens of equating that with pain, with pushing harder, going longer, going farther, grinding through something difficult, pushing ourselves past our comfort zone, unlocking something on the other side of this bridge that we have to build, this thing that we have to get over. And again, that primarily is equated with pain, with suffering, with discomfort. And I think that there is certainly an inherent part of that. But the more I think about it, and again, the more that I've experienced this or recognized this in my own growth journey, the more I observe high performers across all areas of life. So physical, relationship, business/career, wherever individuals are focused on high performance, I don't think that that's actually what endurance is. I don't think that it is solely a equation that has to involve pain and discomfort. I don't think that it is also an inherent relationship or is in relationship with, again, pushing harder, going longer, pain, discomfort, suffering. And so I think there's an opportunity to broaden the lens here. We've talked about these things in different capacities and different ways on different episodes of this show, but I found myself really wanting to distill what is this thing of endurance? What is this thing that we're striving for? Why is it something that we, I think, know is important? I think if you asked anyone if the ability to endure is something that is valuable, I think that they would say yes. But I also have come to understand that our definition around that specific topic, I believe, has a tendency to be skewed. And so let's broaden the lens here. And I know that, again, as I've talked to hundreds of high performers and, well, thousands really, if we take into account my personal work and where I spend time outside of this podcast, endurance shows up in lots of different places. We know that it shows up in business, like I mentioned. So building something over years and years. I've talked a lot about expanding our time horizons. We know that it shows up in relationships, staying committed through hard seasons, not giving up when that might be the easiest solution. We know that it shows up in our health and our consistent habits and working on sustainability, on defining what success actually looks and feels like in our bodies and related to our health, knowing what healthy actually means for us outside of just our physical capabilities. We know that it shows up in leadership, both how we lead ourselves and how we lead those around us, and how we show up under pressure. And with all this in mind, I believe that, very simply, endurance isn't about how much or how hard you can push. It's about how long you can stay aligned. Now, I arrived on that definition very consciously and with a lot of critical thought. And so with that, let me define what aligned looks like, because that's the key language shift. Again, I'm going to give you what I think an upgraded definition of endurance is. Endurance isn't about how much you can push. It is about how long you can stay aligned. With that, we need to define what aligned is. And I think aligned is, among other things, it is being aligned with your values. I believe that it is being aligned with who you said you'd become, the promises that you made to yourself. And I think it's being aligned with the standard that you hold yourself to, not letting yourself slip and not uphold the promises and the standards that you've built for yourself when things get challenging. And so I believe that endurance ultimately is about alignment over time. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with effort, with the intensity of that effort, with how hard or brutal it is, what a slog it is. I think that, again, very simply put, endurance is alignment over time. Now, there are a lot of things, like I mentioned earlier, and like I've come to realize, and I've certainly been in this camp. I think that I've come through all stages of endurance and all different types of identities that I could have wrapped up in that. But I do think that we get endurance wrong as a whole. And I want to define or highlight a few areas that I think that we tend to muddy the waters when it comes to endurance, or to shift our perspective in a way that might not be particularly helpful. So firstly, we equate endurance with intensity. We think that endurance is going all in. We think endurance is pushing ourself or the scenario or even those around us to the limit. We think that endurance is quote unquote no days off. And the reality of it is that intensity is unsustainable. Now, bouts of intensity, certainly intensity with a critical eye towards sustainability, with a critical eye towards what success actually looks and feels like, and what we want that end result to be, and how we define those things. Certainly, intensity plays a role. But again, intensity with the intention of always being intense, we know that that is not the reality. We know that the reality of the situation is intensity is unsustainable. And so that can't equal endurance. Inherently, there is a rift in the relationship between endurance and intensity, that if endurance is alignment over long periods of time, then we know that intensity can't be wrapped up in that equation. We also know that the reality is that intensity burns people out. And so that when we equate endurance with intensity, we, again, can see that that is inherently flawed, because burnout doesn't yield intensity. Or I'm sorry, burnout doesn't yield endurance. It is, again, by nature, a flawed component of endurance, because we need to expand the time horizon. There is a length or a time-based component to endurance. And so by nature, intensity largely can't be involved, not at scale. We also think that endurance equals motivation. So we've taken for granted, I think, or we make a broad stroke where people rely on feeling good to muster or summon the ability to endure. People look for inspiration to find endurance or to continue to endure. People also wait to be in the mood, in quotes. And we don't often get the choice. Now, we can opt into things that are hard, which require endurance. But again, if we zoom out and take a more overarching, life-focused version of endurance, again, endurance being staying aligned for long periods of time, then being in the mood doesn't have anything to do with it. Because it's part of our life. It's part of who we are. It's part of how we are required to show up. And so the reality is that motivation is inconsistent. Sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. But again, endurance and the need to endure is part of the human experience. And so if we wait around for motivation, there's going to be inherent gaps in how we show up in those within endurance. We also know that the reality is that motivation disappears when things get hard. We don't tend to get more motivated the more pressure we have on us. Motivation tends to rise when all things are kind of in alignment, when things are feeling a little more in flow. And so again, as part of one of the misconceptions, I think that equating endurance and motivation is flawed. Lastly, endurance equals suffering. I alluded to this and talked about this at the onset, but people romanticize, we all do it, we romanticize pain and the grind and the struggle, and insert whatever language you've heard. We've all heard it ad nauseum. We've been beaten over the head with it, that the only way to do anything, to get ahead, to be fit, to build the business, to have the relationship, to do the whatever, is to suffer. And so again, we say that endurance equals suffering, and then we romanticize the parts of that are hard. Here's the reality, is that you can work really hard in the wrong direction for a really long time. So hard work does not mean productivity. It doesn't mean success. It doesn't mean that you're accomplishing your goals. You can be in pain. You can grind, you can struggle, you can suffer. That doesn't, there's nothing that says that has to equal the success that you want, that it has to equal you becoming the person that you want on the other side of that. We know that suffering without direction leads to burnout. You just continue to grind and suffer, and there's no clear direction. You don't understand why you're doing that, and you don't recognize that doing that forever is not sustainable. Again, intensity and endurance are not in the same equation. We have to understand that suffering without direction leads to burnout. We also need to understand that endurance isn't about punishment. It's about continuation. Again, the nature of that is that it is time bound. It is long. And it might just be, this season, but it's a longer season than we probably thought. It might be for this year. And then we can extend that out to our lifetime. How do we continue to stay aligned for the duration? For every day that we have the opportunity to show up and give our best and make an impact on the world. And so most people don't fail because they can't go hard. People going hard, people showing up with intensity is not the issue that I've found. I think that we have a tendency to craft a narrative where that's not the case. People aren't willing to do the work. People aren't willing to go hard. They're not willing to deliver the level of intensity required. But in my experience, that's largely not the case. Most people don't fail because they can't go hard. They fail because they can't stay consistent when it's no longer exciting, when all of these things stack and they're over the pain and they're lost the motivation and they've gone too intense for too long and it's just burned them out. They fail because they can't stay in that place because, again, our definition and the equation around how we pursue endurance is flawed. And so we set ourselves up for failure out of the gate. And so again, it's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of wanting. It's not for lack of drive. It's actually the opposite. It's because we can't sustain those things and we don't understand how to stay in alignment for long periods of time. And so again, I'll reiterate, endurance isn't about how hard you can go. It's about how long you can stay. The people that stay are the people that win. Right? You have to be in the game to win the game. And so we need to figure this out. We need to not sprint for 6 months and then be so trash that we can't stay in the game because we don't get a chance to play. Right? If you're burnt out, if you're injured, if you're too tired, if you're disconnected, if you've lost sight of why it even matters to begin with, then endurance is no longer on the table. And you're no longer in the game. And so all of your effort up front was all for naught. And that's a shame because I think we all deserve the opportunity to continue to stay in the game and continue to make an impact. All right. So now let's talk about, I think there's layers of endurance, right? I think this is nuanced. The thrust of this conversation is that we need to open up the conversation. We need to use more language around endurance. And I think there's 3 layers to it, made simply. First layer is there is physical endurance. To be able to stay in the game, to continue to play the proverbial game, there is a physical component of that. We got to get up every day. We got to do the thing. We have to exert ourselves, and there is physical energy there. So this is what people see. This is, I don't think any of us are going to fail or struggle to connect endurance with the physical aspect. So this is the workouts. This is the races. This is the outcome-based goals. This is the long days. This is the output after you've put in the work and now there's something to show for it. It's also measurable. So this is the thing that's a little sexier because it's something that we can grasp. It's miles. It's hours worked, hours put in, hours trained, hours spent developing skills and tools and connections so that I can do this thing. It's weight. It's if you're on the physical side, this is what I look like. This is my body composition. I lost some weight. I gained some weight. I'm molding myself because of the effort that I'm putting in, because of the physical input. I now look different. It's performance metrics: pace, power, heart rate, HRV, sleep. The list goes on. We are inundated with performance metrics, and those are fine. I'm not saying those are bad, but this is an important part, but it's limited. And you can be physically strong and still lack endurance in all other areas of your life. And so the physical piece is important. I do think being physically fit allows us to endure. If we have a body that allows us access to opportunities, that allows us the energy to deploy our brain power and our ideas and to connect with people, that's important. If you don't have the physical ability to go out in the world and day after day continue to do the thing, then again, you get taken out of the game prematurely. So the physical piece is important, but this is where, a lot of times it stops. We think about endurance, boom, physical. But let me reiterate, you can be physically strong, you can be physically fit, you can be physically capable, and still lack endurance in all areas of your life. All right, second layer. Now we're going to go a little deeper. Second layer of endurance. We have mental and emotional endurance. So I talked about this in different ways in some previous podcasts over the winter. If you want to go a little deeper into this, go back to some podcasts in December and January. But this is where things really start to break down. The physical piece is pretty straightforward. And again, it's trackable. So it's something we can share and we can talk about and we can see, but now it starts to get a little further away from us. So our mental and emotional endurance includes several different things. It includes our self-talk. It includes our internal narrative, our internal dialogue, how we talk to ourselves, and then ultimately how we feel about ourselves. It includes our ability to regulate stress and the impact that we let that stress have on us. It includes our ability to respond to setbacks. And these are smaller points. Now they're massive in terms of their impact, but it's hard to nail them down every single day because we have to look for them. This is where we would have to work the muscle. And this is why I said this is where things usually start to break down, is because it's easy to work the muscle on the physical side. I can show up and exercise. I can show up to my office and work long hours. I can schedule more meetings. I can do the outcome externally focused things. That's easy to sink my teeth into. Now I got to get real with myself. I got to work on how I talk to myself, how I build my confidence, how I feel day in and day out. I got to regulate my stress. I got to build a toolbox that allows me to do that. I got to ride the wave inevitably when things get thrown at me. How do I respond to setbacks? And that's more challenging. So examples of that are vast. Let me give you a few. Sticking to a plan when results are slow. How do I respond when I can't see results, but I know I'm going to continue to stick with it? Right? This is where, again, we need that emotional regulation. We need that mental and emotional endurance because there's no outcome yet. We don't spiral when things go wrong. We regulate our emotions. We can be mad about that. We can be frustrated. We can be sad. But it's an input. We take ownership. We have full autonomy over how we show up and how we deploy our endurance. And we can stay composed under pressure. Again, we don't let those external inputs sway us. And I want to be clear, I'm not advocating that you don't feel those things. Get mad, get frustrated, but how we feel and then what our response to those feelings are different things. And that's what allows us to continue to endure, to develop the muscle of endurance, because when we control our response, when we are regulated, when we are clear, when we have mental and emotional endurance, that it doesn't wear us down. These big swings in stress, big swings in response to different scenarios and inputs, that's what leads to burnout. That's what takes us out of the game. And so again, this is where things really start to become extremely important, but it's an under leveraged skill because it's hard to nail down. So this is where most people fall off, but we're going to keep building. There's a third layer to endurance. And this is the endurance of our identity. This is the layer that I don't think anybody talks about. I think that if we were honest, we could probably get to that second layer that I just talked about. It's harder to access, but I think we know, right? Intuitively, we know that regulation and trying to develop these skills, like everything I just talked about, we know that that's important. Having endurance specific to our identity is something that I think is entirely lost on most of us, myself included, until I took the time to really sit with this. And this is the layer, again, that no one really talks about. And it's not about what you do. It has nothing to do with an input, with what I do, with the action I take. It is, though, about who you're becoming and what you're willing to sustain over time. So let me say that again. It's not about what you do. It's about who you're becoming and what you're willing to sustain over time. Again, there's lots of ways this shows up, but let me give you a few examples. Doing work when no one sees it. This is one of the hardest things to do. There's no proof. When there's no proof that what you're doing is going to work, it's going to yield the response or the output or the results that you want, it's going to elicit the definition of success that you'd like, whatever that is, it is so hard to continue to do the work when nothing's happening. No one sees it. No one's talking about it. You're not getting results from it. But this is where it's so heavily tied to our identity, because this is a promise that we made to ourselves. We're doing work now for the person that we want to become and the things that we're willing to sustain over time. Am I willing to continue to do this so that the future version of me gets to reap the benefits of what I'm having to endure right now? That's a contract that we make with ourselves, and it's one that we're always wrestling with. We also see it show up in staying committed when there's no immediate reward. Like I talked about, we don't see that. I don't get stronger. I don't get faster. I didn't make more money. My spouse doesn't notice the changes I'm making. They're not right. Whatever that is, it's hard. It's hard when what ends up happening is our internal dialogue, we start to make that mean something about us. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Maybe it'll never happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this isn't the right thing to be putting my effort towards. Again, that's a contract that we have to continue to renegotiate with ourselves. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is to not sway, not bend, not break, not renegotiate the terms of that contract. You have to commit to who you said you wanted to become and what you're willing to sustain over long periods of time. And I've seen this in so many areas of my life, and I never put that fine of a point on it until really kind of recently. I mean, again, this podcast, this episode is a culmination of a lot of things that I've been thinking about and conversations I've been having as always, but I've seen this play out so many times, and in my entrepreneurial journey, it's that, it's you see success in year 5 when you thought you were going to see it in year 1. You finally reach the goal that you thought was going to take 6 months, and it takes you 6 years. You thought that, it just takes so much longer than we think. And we get peppered every day with quote unquote overnight success stories. And it has made us so afraid when things take longer than we thought, because we think that it shouldn't be the case. And let me tell you that comparison is the thief of joy. I promise you it doesn't do you any good to compare yourself to anyone else's timeline. And your life is built on what you can sustain, not what you can start. Everyone can start. Not everyone can sustain. And the true impact and the change in your life and the things that you want are on the other side of your ability to sustain. And I promise you that this third layer, the endurance of identity, I promise you that identity is going to be what carries you when all of the other things disappear. Motivation, benchmarks in your life, your business, your athletic career, your relation, when all of those things change, when they go away, when you accomplish them and there's something on the other side, when all of the sands are shifting underneath you, and inevitably our lived experience, as dynamic and complex as it is, continues to change, your identity is what will carry you. Your relationship and commitment to yourself, who you said you become, and what you're willing to sustain. That is the skill to master. So we also have to recognize that all this is fine and good. Hopefully at this point, you're thinking, okay, that makes sense. I see that. I hear that. I think there's an opportunity to expand that definition. I want to deploy that in my life, but why do we lose endurance? We know that it's important. We know that, intuitively, intellectually, we know that one day, 1 month, even 1 year, it's a drop in the bucket. Hopefully we get the opportunity to continue to show up. But so many of us lose endurance. And I want to be clear that I don't think people lose endurance because they're weak. They lose it because of a few things. They chase intensity before consistency. So they start strong, but they fade quickly. Again, there's an inherent burnout component there that we have to recognize. That if intensity is part of your equation, then you need to figure out how to dose that effectively over long periods of time. So we go all in and then they burn out. Spikes in intensity don't build anything. Reps are what build. Going and sprinting one time around a track does not make you fit. If you do that every week for a year, you'll be extremely fit. So they don't lose endurance because they're weak, but we lose it because we chase intensity first. They also lose it, we tend to lose it because we don't know who we're becoming. We start with the externally focused things. We set goals, but we're not sure of our identity and what the identity is behind those. We're not sure of how we're supposed to show up in those goals. We're not sure of the contract that we've made with ourselves. And there's no deeper reason. And so when things get hard, there's nothing anchoring people. There's nothing anchoring us. And that's why that third layer of endurance that I just talked about is so important, is because it's really the thing that allows you to stay in it. It's your anchor. And if you don't know who you're becoming, and if you're not committed to who that person is, you won't stay when it gets hard because there's no reason. Why would you stay if you don't know what the outcome is? If you don't trust and believe in the person that you get to become? If you don't fully understand what working so hard to reach this thing is going to give you. And again, what it gives you from an outcome perspective is actually not the win. The physical fitness, the body, the business, the race, the relationship, whatever, that's the external thing. What it gives you is who you get to become in the process of doing that. I think we also stop enduring because we avoid discomfort, because we don't see it as a way to build capacity. We tend to interpret discomfort as a sign to stop, a sign that something's wrong. This is hard. This is challenging. This is too hard. This is too challenging. Let me pull back. I think that we should interpret that as a signal for growth. We have to know that the only way that growth exists is friction. When things are hard, when things are challenging, when there's discomfort, there's no world where if we don't stick with that, again, with a clear anchor of our identity, when we stick with that, there's growth on the other side. Because the inherent relationship between friction and growth is that one supports the other. If we weren't in friction, if it wasn't hard, we'd be plateaued. We've already done it. We have those skills. We know that world. We understand that landscape. But when we're in discomfort, when things are challenging, know that that means that you're on a path to growth. Now, again, it has to be in the right direction. You can work really hard and be really uncomfortable in the wrong direction forever. So again, understand your direction. Again, I can't overstate how important the identity piece is. And then lastly, the reason that we give up on endurance is because we rely on external validation. We rely on results, we rely on recognition, we rely on feedback. And when those disappear, and they will, always, when they disappear, so does our effort. And that's why we need to define those three layers. The first layer of endurance is really where that external validation lives. But as we've seen, there's deeper layers. And so we need to understand what each of those layers looks and feels like in our own life so that we can continue to push. So with that in mind, let's all agree that we don't want to fail. We don't want to stop enduring because we know that it's important. How do we build real endurance? We need to first lower the intensity. We need to lower the intensity. We need to increase consistency. We need to stop chasing perfect days, and we need to focus on repeatable days. Perfection is the enemy of progress, and it does not exist. You can always do something better. So whether it's doing shorter workouts more consistently, whether it's daily actions in your work, whether it's small habits stacked over long periods of time, consistency compounds. If you keep stacking bricks day after day, it will yield results. There's no world where that won't equal some level of success. Now, take action clearly in the direction of the things that you want, but small actions. Keep stacking. Again, we need to lower the intensity, increase consistency as the first step in how to build real endurance. Next, we need to build self-regulation. We have to learn to observe our thoughts. Those are your body's signals. Lean in, sit with them for a second. We have to learn to observe our thoughts. We have to not react so immediately, not be so swayed by external input and our emotions. Again, it's okay to feel those things. Get mad, get frustrated, get angry, get pissed off, but that doesn't have to mean or doesn't have to be in alignment with the reaction that you have and the action that you take. And we need to learn to stay steady under pressure. We are all under pressure. If you're a high performer, there's pressure. Welcome. It doesn't go away. You build skills to cope with it, but then as you continue to build and you continue to grow, new pressures present themselves. So you're always in a scenario where it will continue to be pressured, because unless you want to stay right where you're at, there'll be more increased levels of pressure. So it's not that the conditions need to be better, it's that we need to regulate better. The conditions didn't do anything to you. What made you feel the way that you feel, what made us feel like we want to give up, like we're tired of it, is that we're not regulated. And so again, these big swings, the stress, the pressure, that's the burnout piece. And again, it is in conflict with endurance by design. Next, to build endurance, we need to anchor to our identity. We have to ask ourselves, who am I becoming? Who do I get to become in the process of this? And then I want you to ask yourself a key question. When you are crystal clear on who you're becoming, then I want you to ask yourself, what does that person do daily? What does that person do? Not the person right now, not the person who is struggling, who's uncomfortable, who's trying to endure. What is the person that I get to become? What are they doing? And align with those actions. Act in alignment with the identity of the person that you are working to become. I believe that you don't rise to your goals. We actually fall to the identity that we've defined for ourselves. Because if we align our actions with the identity of the person that we want to become, we inherently will rise to the goals of that person, of that more elevated person, of the individual who is smarter, stronger, faster, better, more compassionate, whatever. And so we have to anchor to an identity. Lastly, we have to redefine success. Success equals staying consistent. If your goal is endurance, then the only real marker for success is consistency, because again, it has to last. So success is not in this construct. It is not big wins. It's not perfect outcomes. It's not the shiny medal at the end of the finish line. It's not the big, sexy, ribbon cutting. It's winning is continuing. The win is that we continue. We get to wake up tomorrow and give it hell one more time. And I hope that we can do it again tomorrow. So we have to redefine success. So here's my invitation to you. With all of this considered and this expanded definition and layers of endurance, here's my invitation. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a more, in quotes, perfect plan. You need to decide if you're willing to stay. If you're willing to stay and do the work to become the person that you're committed to becoming. Because at some point, everything gets hard. As the old tried and true saying goes, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Because some point, everything gets hard. Everything gets boring. Everything loses the initial excitement that got us going. And that's where endurance actually begins. When things get boring, when the excitement fades, when it gets hard, when you're having those internal dialogues, when you're realigning with your identity, when you're recommitting to the person that you said you were going to become, when you're unwilling to waver on your standards, that's where endurance actually begins. Because I promise you, endurance isn't about starting strong. It is, however, about staying when it's no longer exciting. And if we can just hold on to that and know that it's at that point, that singular instance when all of those things fade and there's no external validation, we're not getting the recognition, and I lost excitement, and this feels boring, and I'm not sure if I'm smart enough, and is this the right move, and all of these things, that's when endurance starts. Up to that point, it was just layer one. But then we get to become the person that we get to be really excited about. It's not about doing it when we feel good. Stay anyway. Commit. And don't just commit for a few months or a few years. Commit to showing up and truly enduring. So, as always, I hope you found value in this. I hope that right now you're clear on what you can do to further refine the true skills of endurance so that you can show up and you can continue to put forth your best effort to become the version of you that you committed to. I always want everyone who listens to Endurance Minded to walk away with more value and more clarity than they came into any episode with. I hope this is no different, no exception. As always, you can find us on enduranceminded.com. Scroll to the bottom. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you. Our community is incredible. I know I say that every time, but thank you. This means so much to me. And this continues to be a place that I truly value showing up. As always, rate this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes released every other Tuesday. We have some incredible guests coming up into the spring and summer. So you will not want to miss the episodes that are coming. And share this episode or one that resonates with you with a friend. Help us expand our audience. I'm here to add value. I'm here to flatten the learning curve for people. And if you think anyone that we've yet to connect with can glean some value from Endurance Minded, it would mean the world to me if you shared this episode or one that connected with you with a friend or your community. As always, thank you so much. I'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.